Good morning, guys. Just playing around with the camera and another old lens out of the lens cupboard. Believe it or not, I did get a haircut yesterday. Anyway, this video isn't about my hair, it's about this lens. Recently, we started a new series called Old Lens Challenge, where Gary goes over to his lens cabinet, pulls something out he hasn't used in years, and sees what kind of photos he can get with it. Well, I've got a really old, cheap gem for you guys today. This is a Sigma 75-200 lens. And if you know anything about 70-200 lenses, they're very heavy, they're very expensive. This lens is, again, a compromise lens, and I'll tell you why. The price. I paid 130 bucks for this lens back in the day. It goes to f2.8, but only from 75 to 135 millimeters. When you zoom any further than that, it drops to 3.5. So it's not a straight f2.8 across the range, and that's why, well, that and that it's probably 35 years old, why it's so cheap, but excellent. This is one of my sharpest lenses, or I used to think it was. So it's a beautiful snowy day out there in Northern Ontario, and we're going to start right here at the feeder with some shots. Then we're going to head out into the cold, walk around, see if we can find any snowy scenes we want to shoot. Before we do that, I want to show you guys this lens up close and do a little bit of a comparison between the other 70-200 lenses that I own. Let's start by showing you guys this lens. We'll use my happiness equation book as a good mount. Okay. We're going to shoot this lens on the APS-C A6600. Why? Because I have the LA-EA5 adapter, which allows us to touch screen focus with this old screw drive lens, which I find is a really nice feature. Now, I just wanted to show you guys, this lens, as I mentioned, goes from 75 to 200. So it's a little bit of an oddball. Usually it's a 70-200 lens, right? I'll also show you guys that it is f2.8 to 3.5. And if we look on our screen, we'll see that it is at f2.8 right there. Okay, and if we extend, so this is an old push-pull zoom. So you push it out to zoom out. If we extend to just over 135, we're still at f2.8. If we go any further than that, it becomes 3.2. If we go all the way out to 200, it becomes f3.5. So I actually own 3 Sigmas in that range. The oldest being the 75-200, the second oldest being a 70-200, and this is an f2.8, so you can see how much bigger this lens is. This lens weighs 880 grams, so just under 2 pounds. These two lenses weigh just over 3 pounds. This is the newest A mount that you could get, I believe, which was a Sigma with the silent motor 7200. It's the heaviest of the bunch, and it's also the longest of the bunch. Internal focus. So you're going to either carry around 2 pounds or 3 pounds regardless. Both of these, all 3 of these have excellent image quality. This one being very fast. It's probably the fastest mechanical shooting lens that I have. Very fast to autofocus. This one kind of gets an in-between focus. This one is actually very slow with the silent motor, but it's very accurate. I just wanted to show you the size comparison and why you might want to carry this old beauty instead of one of these. These are quite big and bulky in the hand. This one, it's very heavy because it's all metal, but it's much slimmer. 67 millimeter filter thread on it. I just love it. So as I mentioned, this lens here is the compromise lens. This Sigma HSM lens I paid over $700 on the used market for back in the day, probably 6 years ago. The other one that I showed you guys I paid over $500 for on the used market. Okay, so this is your college starving student lens, which has no money. And the reason to get this lens, as I said, was, size and weight and bulk, and then of course money. Those are the 2 main reasons. This is an outstanding value for the images that this old lens produces. So we're just going to jump right in, and I'm going to take it out, and we're going to start showing you guys images that I can get with that old lens. Some people reported that back in the day, this Sigma had plastic gears and that they would wear out on a new modern Sony Alpha camera. Well, I used this for many years on a Sony A99 and an A77 II with the highest autofocus setting, and I never had an issue. I've never tried it on an E-mount camera with an adapter, so we'll see how that works this week if we have any wearing out of the system. I hope not. It's a beautiful old lens, but if it does, I'll be out 130 bucks. I hope not. I just want to show you guys the focusing noise. We can touch screen focus with this, which is really nice. Listen to this old motor go. Quite a bit of noise, quite a bit of herky-jerky, but it gets the job done. The one thing I do find fiddly on this lens is this is the manual focus. So if we put the camera in manual focus mode, we can use this ring here, and it's, I don't know why they made that so tiny, but they did. So this lens does not have a lens lock, so as you're walking around, it's going to extend and hang at your side. A little annoying. There is chromatic aberration with this lens as well. You will get some purple fringing, and I'll show you guys that on the bird shots that I got at the bird feeder. And it's very easy to fix, so I'll show you before and after. Okay, so I've opened one of the images here in Corel Paint Shop Pro 2022 of the chickadees, and I wanted to show you guys the chromatic aberration, the purple fringing that you will get with this lens. And so actually, here's a great example because we see not only the purple that we get, but we also see the green that we get. I'm just very quickly going to show you guys how to remove this. It's a one-step fix. If we go under Adjust, Chromatic Aberration Removal, once the Chromatic Aberration Removal tool opens, we need to pan over to where we can see the fringing. Okay, right here. And now we're just going to select it in the left window. Then the computer is going to do its thing. I've raised this radius the last time I used this lens. And what it does is, now you can see on the right, it's going to remove that. We just click OK, and then it's going to show us on our image what it looks like. Look at that, all of the purple is gone. Now we can redo that again for this green fringing, okay? What I want to show you guys while we're in here is the sharpness of this lens. This is shot at wide open, f2.8, and if we zoom in here 100%, look at the feather detail. This is shot through my glass window in my living room. I mean, it's pretty good detail. I have not adjusted anything other than removing the purple, which you guys just watched. In fact, why don't I just show you guys very quickly what I do to an image like this. There's some very basic things. I use what's called the Nik collection, and if we use Color Effects Pro, there are a couple basic things that I do to most of my images with these old lenses. This isn't a tutorial on this, but I'll just show you while we're here. I always add a little bit of color saturation and a little bit of warmth to all of my images, okay? Then I add another filter, and sometimes it's the detail extractor. And what that does is it brings out all the fine feather details. And the last filter that we'll add is just a levels and curves adjustment, and we'll just bring up the level a little bit so that we can see that eyeball better. You know, those are some of the basic adjustments that I would do to photos. We've added a bit of texture, right? So if we skip back and forth, there's straight out of the camera. There's Gary's very quick fix. Now I'll also fix this because there was a branch or something in front here. That annoys me. So I'll just remove some of the... I'm just working on these images that we took with this old Sigma 75-200, and I want to show you guys that we can fix a lot of the shortcomings of this lens in post-production. And you should. If you're going to skimp out on your lenses, which is fine, because sometimes we have no choice but to save $1, then you need to learn how to post-edit your images, because you can get these images looking like a $1,000 lens if you add a few little skills, a bit of contrast, a bit of sharpening, a bit of texture, you play around with the images, and you can do a lot in post-production. And you're going to need to do that if you're running these old lenses. So slightly snowing out today, and that's a bad thing because I don't have a lens hood for this lens. We're going to end up traveling the woods with the lens cap on there. And I'll tell you guys right now, I have lost more caps over the years. Using a strap system where the camera's banging against your leg, eventually it's going to knock that cap off there. And in the snow, good luck finding it. So I'm going to be really careful today. I always recommend if you're out shooting in snowy conditions, put a lens hood on. But again, that's another deficiency of this old lens, is that it takes a screw-on 67mm hood. And I don't have one, so we're going to do without today. All right, so we'll just grab a quick shot of those singing penguins from here. We'll grab one at f2.8 and one at f5.6 just to compare for chromatic aberration and sharpness. Okay, let's take a look at the singing penguin. And we've actually got two images here. We've got one shot at f2.8 and one shot at f5.6. Okay, let's take a look at the f2.8 image. This one is shot wide open, as you guys can see. And there is a little bit of that purple fringing that we talked about. I showed you guys how to remove that. But overall, I mean, the image is decently sharp. You wouldn't shoot a scene like this normally with f2.8, right? We would shoot a portrait or something at that range. We would shoot this scene with this aperture, f5.6. And once we do that, you guys can see there is no purple fringing. Look at the sharpness on the lens. We haven't had to sharpen anything, get rid of any purple. This is the aperture that you would use for walk-around shooting with this lens. So it does a really nice job. Close focusing on this lens is disappointing. I don't remember it being this far, but it's probably over 4 feet. 1.3 meters, so around 4 feet. So you're not going to get any macro shots with it. Geez, the more I'm using this thing, the more I'm remembering, it's not as good as I remembered. But then again, this is Gary who, hey, if Gary wants a $2,000 lens now, he goes and buys it. Back in the day, the $130 deal here, I used this lens by itself for a couple of years. I even shot a wedding with this lens once. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can do it if you're a guy on a budget. So I'm just walking around the yard taking images of snow machines and wood piles and the dog. And I'm like, why? It seems so long. It seems, the reach seems so far. Then I remembered we're shooting this on the A6600. So the effective focal length is actually 105 to 300. So yeah, if I was using this on the A7R3 and the LAEA4, we would still have full autofocus. We just wouldn't have touch focus, and we would only have like 12 or 15 focus points. So you can use it on with the A7 III and A7R3 with the LAEA4. Just trying to do some manual focus shots with fingerless gloves, and very hard to do, very hard to find that focus ring. So here I'll show you guys the advantage of having the f2.8 to separate your subject, and we'll just use this snowy covered foliage in the foreground, and we'll shoot it at f2.8 and f5.6 just to show you guys the difference. Everything has a nice beautiful light dusting of fresh snow this morning, so it makes everything very pretty. I am having fun with this old lens. I am remembering all the drawbacks of this old lens. To put it in perspective, you can't even buy a 50mm lens, which is a standard lens today, an f2.8, you can't even buy that for $130, right? So this lens really is a steal if you're in that very select category of poor, broke down, can't afford anything else. Just testing the autofocus on some static objects such as trees. I know that sounds weird, but what I'm doing is coming up and zooming and seeing how long it takes from minimum focus to hit a tree that's out there 20 feet. And it's literally taking a few seconds, like, and I can't show you that because I've only got two hands. Trust me, this lens is not going to win any autofocus awards. It's going to get a pretty low score on the autofocus speed test. Okay, so I have focused on this tree as close as we can, and I'm just going to move up and show you how long it takes to focus out 60 feet. Yeah, that was terrible. That's the speeds we're dealing with. So although totally usable in a landscape environment, you know, the zoom is great to get in on little mushrooms and things on logs and snow in the leaves. That's not where this lens is going to shine. Where it's going to actually be of greater import to a photographer is in the portrait range because of the nice f2.8 that you can get for this price, and also in low light. I like old lenses. I like taking something old that no one else has a use for anymore and bringing it back to life. That's what I used to do, is collect, you know, 30-year-old lenses and say, what can I get with that lens? And this one, I have gotten a lot of good shots over the years. Would I recommend buying this in 2021? It totally depends on your circumstance. If you need f2.8 with a zoom, absolutely. If you can find one for 150 bucks and you're shooting an E-mount or an A-mount camera, yeah, why not? Obviously, you are in that range where you can't afford anything better, and really you are getting a lot for this lens. I kind of sound like I'm knocking it throughout this testing, but really the sharpness is more than good. It's very good, even wide open at 2.8. The fringing and chromatic aberration is minimal on this old lens. You do get a bit of purple, you do get a bit of green. All old lenses exhibit that. So, you know what? I still, yeah, for the right price, I would still recommend this old beauty. Yeah, we'll try a little bit of video with this old lens. Of course, it's all manual focus with any adapter on an E-mount camera. Gage, get that stick off my lawn. Come on, take your snack back to the woods. Let's go. I'm going to run over that with the lawn tractor come spring. He actually did it. He actually took the stick, brought it in the bush, and dropped it where I told him. 3 years old and he's finally learning. Come on, Nate. Leave that stick. Let's go. Leave it. Oh. No, that's still on the lawn. Down here. Come on. Get the stick. Bring it down here. Let's go. Come on. Down here in the swamp. All right, drop it. Leave it. Okay, let's go. Leave it. Let's go. Come on. You're grounded.